Secretary of State Antony Blinken is back in the Middle East today for his 8th visit to the region since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th. He arrived in Tel Aviv today. Before that, he was in Cairo, where he met with Egypt's president on efforts to secure a ceasefire and hostage release deal between Israel and Hamas. This comes as Benny Gantz, a centrist member of the country's war cabinet, has resigned over Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's handling of the war in Gaza and what he says is a lack of a post-war plan. Meanwhile, Israel is celebrating after Israeli forces rescued 4 hostages during a raid in central Gaza over the weekend. The mission was carried out in broad daylight, very risky. Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry claims at least 200 Palestinians were killed during the operation. CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay is following all of this for us from Tel Aviv, Israel. So, Chris, what more are we learning about the rescue of the 4 Israeli hostages from Gaza captivity?
Hi, Lindsay. Well, we're learning more and more details of exactly how this very secretive and very risky mission was pulled off, about these elite commandos who spent weeks rehearsing their precise moves, going through these life-size mock-ups of the 2 apartment buildings where the 4 hostages were being held, and then the extreme risk that they took to actually carry it off in broad daylight. That was both to give them the element of surprise, but also to help them see better and make sure that they wouldn't mistake a terrorist for the hostages that they were there to rescue. All in all, it has been a massive morale boost for this country that has been experiencing an existential crisis ever since the October 7 massacre and that massive security breach that took place. They had lost faith in the country's ability to protect itself. But now, by showing just how deeply they were able to penetrate behind Hamas lines in order to extract these hostages, well, it's been a source of just a big national sigh of relief. Of course, you have to also mention the immense toll it took for the people of Gaza. According to the Israel Defense Forces, there were roughly 100 casualties, both dead and wounded, that included both combatants and civilians. However, if you ask Hamas, that number is more like 1,000.
How could this rescue and what happened over the weekend impact ceasefire negotiations?
Well, Israel is now hoping that this will be what finally pushes the dial on those negotiations that have been going nowhere ever since the start of this war. Now that they've got this instrument of pressure, they've been able to show Hamas just how capable they are of penetrating their lines. Hamas might be worried that they could do it again. And if they start to lose their leverage, if Hamas starts to lose the hostages, then they don't have as much to negotiate with. Or worse, from their perspective, even their senior commanders, people like Yahya Sinwar, might be afraid that the same intelligence that was used to locate and rescue these hostages might be used to locate and kill him. So the hope is that this could finally push Hamas to say, fine, we're ready to hand over these hostages in exchange for some form of peace.
What can you tell us about Secretary Blinken's agenda?
Well, he's coming to indeed hope and push for that peace deal to come through. And he's also coming at a very critical time for Israel. Not only is Israel celebrating these hostages being rescued, but in the same weekend that they were rescued, a key member of the war cabinet, Benny Gantz, resigned over Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's inability to come up with a day-after plan for Gaza and explain how the Strip would be governed once its war plans were actually achieved. Now, Benny Gantz was always seen as a moderating influence on the conservative right-wing government of Benjamin Netanyahu. With him gone, that further isolates Benjamin Netanyahu, both in the eyes of Israel and in the eyes of Antony Blinken and the White House.
How are people responding to Gantz's resignation? Any response from Netanyahu himself?
Netanyahu has been quick to urge Benny Gantz to stay in the government. You know, before he left the war cabinet, I should say, he didn't want him to because Netanyahu recognized the legitimacy that Benny Gantz gave to that war cabinet. So by losing him, he loses some of that legitimacy, and also in the eyes of the world. You know, there was a sense of unity that came by having somebody like Benny Gantz in this war cabinet, because before the war, it was just Netanyahu and his as the right-wing Knesset that was holding him up. When the war happened and when the hostages were taken, there was this national unity that was put forward to show that all of Israel was on the same page. Now, not so much, Lindsay.
Chris Livesay, thank you.